House Leader of Third Party.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today and every day I honor the matriarchs whose patience, love and support has forged the person that I am today. These two questions that I'm about to ask are in honor of my friend and colleague, the Leader of the Third Party, my grandmothers, my aunties, my mother, my sisters, my nieces, cousins, my wife, Emily, and my daughter, Ella. My question to the government: what progress has been made on the many, many, many promises to address gender-based violence in British Columbia?
Minister of State for Childcare.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you to the member opposite for the question. I share his commitment to this work and our obligations as government, but as members of our community, to stand up against gender-based violence in all its forms. It happens in communities of every kind across our province. We know that Indigenous women and girls, racialized women, newcomers, immigrants, trans people in our communities are disproportionately likely to face violence. We are committed to taking action on gender-based violence and supporting survivors. We're building an action plan led by the Parliamentary Secretary for Gender Equity to end gender-based violence and ensure that the supports are there. While that work is underway, Mr. Speaker, we're continuing to take steps to ensure that supports are there, providing funding to about 50 community centers, sexual assault centers, and increasing it by $10 million a year. This is funding that is for emergency sexual assault response. I know the member opposite has a commitment to this issue, as do I. Mr. Speaker, we're providing stable funding to over 400 victim services and violence against women programs, investing in housing for women leaving violence and seeking safety and opportunity with their children. Mr. Speaker, this is work we're committed to, me personally, all those on this side of the House, and I will continue this work. Thank you.
Member supplemental.
Mr. Speaker, nearly 45% of Canadian women have experienced some form of intimate partner violence, and this rate is increasing. The numbers are even higher for Indigenous women and girls and LGBTQ and Two-Spirit people. This government has made many promises, including the promise of an action plan to address gender-based violence that the Minister mentioned. That was due by the end of 2022, Mr. Speaker, and we're nearing the end of the first quarter of 2023. We've not yet seen that. I have stood many times in this House when there's ministerial statements with respect to missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls, and the very small amounts of money that have been invested in action by this provincial government. As the Minister mentioned, there has been finally, after many years of advocacy from the Minister, before she was a member of this place, to increase the funding for sexual assault centres, and certainly I know there's gratitude for that. But unfortunately, it doesn't appear, Mr. Speaker, that despite the promises of action plans and the promises that have been made, that gender-based violence is actually a priority for this government. So through you, again, Mr. Speaker, the promises are not actions. When is this BC NDP government going to deliver on the promises with actions to address gender-based violence?
Minister of State for Childcare.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thanks again to the member. With regards to the action plan, that is a commitment our government has made. We're taking the time to get it right, including with our partners in the communities, our community partners, service delivery partners, and Indigenous partners. Mr. Speaker, that action plan is underway, but we're not waiting for the plan to take those concrete steps that survivors need and that communities need. just this week, Mr. Speaker, with the introduction of the Intimate Images Act is one example, but Mr. Speaker, all post-secondary institutions are now required to have sexual violence and misconduct policies, investments in transition homes and safe homes and second stage housing, working with our partners from police to frontline service providers. Mr. Speaker, this work is underway for an action plan, and steps are taken across all parts of government to have the services and supports in there while we undertake that big picture work. Thank you.